Hi, friends of the IDF. Thank you for joining us today for this really incredible opportunity to hear from the IDF on the ground in Turkey. As you all know, a devastating earthquake rocked Turkey a week ago. I'm sure we've all seen the pictures and the devastation. It's truly mind-boggling. And thousands of lives have been lost so far. But there was one country who acted swiftly and sent the second largest delegation to save lives and provide medical aid. And that country was Israel. Colonel Edri, a longtime friend of FIDF, who is joining us today. Thank you, Colonel Edri. We are so honored, is leading the medical field hospital delegation. And he also joined the search and rescue team. Perhaps you all have heard that most of the members of the search and rescue team returned to Israel yesterday after rescuing 19 people from the rubble. But the medical team is continuing on, led by Colonel Edri. I also want to introduce the other speaker who we'll be getting to hear from in just a few moments. We'll also be getting to hear from Dr. Daniel King. He is an internal and pulmonary medicine physician with expertise in intensive care. He served in the IDF's Air Force, studied at Ben Gurion University. He did his specialization work at Soroka Medical Center and the University of Maryland, and just an incredible background. And he is now on the ground in Turkey as well. He's going to be offering us some very unique insights into the medical delegation's operations in this war zone and how that is all coming together within the complexity of this situation. And before we get to our incredible guests, which we're going to do in just a moment, I want to share that if you are at any point today motivated to help this effort, there is something that you can do. The IDF has specifically reached out to FIDF and has asked us to fund the emergency medical equipment that is being used in the IDF field hospitals. So we are not helpless. If you want to help, if you want to do something about what you're seeing on the news, then click the link in your email or go to FIDF.org and help us meet the IDF's needs. We can make a life or death difference. So with that, without further ado, it is my honor to introduce Colonel Elad Edri, the IDF Search and Rescue Brigade and commander of the Humanitarian Medical Aid Delegation in Turkey. Thank you for being with us, sir. All right, it looks like we could be having a connection issue, which is not a surprise. As you can imagine, with what's happening in Turkey right now, the internet is spotty. There are certain areas that have connection, that don't have connection. And so Colonel Edri alerted us. He's here. Okay. Colonel Edri, thank you. Can you hear us?
I'm here with you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, excellent. Thank you. Colonel Edri, can you give us a status? What is it like there in Turkey now that the search and rescue team has left, and it seems that we've shifted into a new phase of the situation?
Well, good evening, everyone from Turkey. It's evening here, and we just finished another working day. I mean, it's the middle of the day for the hospital, but the rest of the delegation is near to close the working day. We are operating here for the 9th day, and since the first earthquake from last week that caught us all in the middle of the night. It was 3:15 a.m. Israel time when the first phones arrived, and we understood that there is a major earthquake in Turkey. And as I believe most of you know, after only less than 24 hours, the first group of rescuers were on our way here to Turkey, and in another 24 hours, the field hospital that Major King is part of it. Well, the situation now in the city is that the city is in the dark, at least the part of the city that I'm in. They counted more than 30,000 dead people in all Turkey, and a few thousands of dead here in that city, in Kahramanmaraş, which is the city that we are now posted. And the major effort for the first days was search and rescue. And we had the opportunity to get here very fast because Turkey is very close to Israel. And we brought here 3 different groups of rescuers from the NRU, from our national rescue team. And these groups started almost immediately with search and rescue actions. And as said, they managed to rescue 19 people out of the sites, which is something incredible because at least for the past 25 years, we didn't have this number of successful rescuers from real sites because, as you probably know, after earthquake, the sites are very complicated, as demonstrated last year in Surfside in Miami, which also there we took part with the rescue mission and efforts. And at the same time, we brought from Israel a very large hospital with more than 140 people, most of them medical teams. And they started to operate and to work from a hospital that actually, a Turkey hospital that actually was abandoned by the staff, and they needed help. But in this part, I'll let later Dr. King to describe the operation they managed to do there. So for now, we are in the city. We're still here. The rescuers indeed went yesterday back to Israel. Sunday evening, local time, we declared of moving from search and rescue to recovery. So at this point, a lot of recovery actions are taking part. A lot of machinery, I'm talking about dozens of bulldozers are in town, chopping the buildings because there are more than 140 buildings that collapsed in the earthquake only in this city. So they are chopping the buildings and they start to remove the rubble from the city to outside of the city, and actually to evacuate all the damage that is here on sites.
Was there, I know I had the opportunity to speak with you when you were in Surfside, and I remember that there were some scenes there that were particularly emotional. I'm wondering if there were any scenes that touched you in Turkey that you can share with us.
Well, we have to pick because there were dozens of scenes, by the way, especially at the hospital. But I can think about one scene that the rescue team, one of the rescue teams, managed to rescue 4 different family members from one family in one building, and it took more than 30 hours. They started with getting out 2 young sisters, and after that they got to the father, and only after that they got to the mother and to another child. And fortunately the child was alive, and they took him out, and the mother was dead. And the thing was that they found 5 different family members from the same family at the same building, and they managed to rescue 4 of them. They managed to pull out also the mother. And during that time, the child was very close to the mother in the same air pocket, but he didn't know that she was dead. And it was very, very hard for the team to explain to him why, when they pull out his mother, they actually took her to another place. But the happy part, the happy end of this story is that the father and the other children are alive and together.
It's truly a miracle. I mean, a story like that sounds like a clear miracle. I have to ask, what is it like? What has your reception been being an IDF soldier in Turkey? To have you be the hero that in a situation like this, for example, what is it? What's been the local reaction to the IDF delegation? Colonel Edri, can you hear me? I'm not sure that Colonel Edri will have to come back to that question. Give him just a second. While we're waiting for Colonel Edri to reconnect, Dr. King, Major Dr. King, if I can ask you a question. A moment ago, Colonel Edri alluded to, that you would be able to describe the operations from a medical perspective. Can you give us a peek into that world while we wait for him to reconnect?
Sure. So as Colonel Edri said, we arrived at the hospitals. It was abandoned by most of the teams. There was a bit of work being done in the emergency department, but there was no patients admitted. And we started preparing the hospital for accepting patients, building a new emergency department or re-equipping the new emergency department, medical ward, and in my case, intensive care unit, which meant practically scrubbing the floors, seeing what equipment we can use that was left over, and bringing in our own equipment. It took us only a few hours since the equipment started arriving, which was Thursday night, and by Friday morning we were ready to go. The first patient we admitted was Friday morning. I would say 2 or 3 hours immediately after we started working. This was a young child, 4-year-old, called Aras. He was pulled out of the rubble, and he came in pretty sick, hypothermic, hypovolemic. We treated him by warming him up, giving him fluids, and it was amazing to see how he's recovered, how he started to recover. Still had quite a few problems, especially as far as electrolytes and some other issues. We weren't sure about his family. Unfortunately, his father was killed, but we were happy to hear that his mother did survive. She was taken to a different hospital, and actually this afternoon they were reunited on the medical floor, and hopefully they both will be able to be discharged really soon. All in all, we treated from Friday morning till today about 400 patients in all the departments of the hospital. That means the emergency department and wards. In the intensive care unit, we admitted 26 patients, out of which 17 were patients who were pulled out of the rubble. Some of them stayed for longer periods of time. Others were just admitted for a few hours and discharged. We had 6 ICU beds, which was not really enough. So some of the patients, as I said, were brought in, given sort of quick treatment, saw that they were stable, and then sent out of the ward, quick turnover of the bed, and then the patient was put in.
Colonel Edri just joined us again. I would love for both of you to speak to the question that I posed a moment ago. What has been your experience with the locals' reaction to you, to seeing IDF soldiers there? Like, what is the reception been? Has it been difficult?
Well, first of all, it's very important to understand that in this city there are a few thousands and even more, like dozens of thousands of Syrian refugees. And maybe Dr. King would like to give his reference, but in the hospital they gave treatment to, I think, 14 or so Syrian refugees. Anyway, during our operation in the city, when the rescue teams walked on the streets, between the sites. They experienced a very warm welcome. Most of the people here, we had a very warm welcome from the people here because they understood that we came to help. Some of them remembered the Israel delegation from the earthquake from 1999, which was also a severe one that happened to be in Turkey also, and that was sent a delegation here of a few hundreds of rescuers also. So this time is actually the third time. It's not the first, and it's not the second. And after we started to rescue people from the rebels, they understood that the Israeli teams managed to success and managed to pull people alive from this very complicated site. And actually, people started to demand that the Israeli teams will start to get to the sites in the city because they wanted I believe, the professionalism of the teams. Two short experiences or stories that we needed to, let's say, to overcome during the operation. First, I said that there were dozens of buildings that fell down, and at the first days there weren't enough rescue units, local and from foreign countries that were with boots on the ground. So usually what happens on earthquakes that there is kind of an operation center that send the different teams from all over the world and the local teams also to addresses, to sites. But this time there were so many buildings and not that much units that the commanders of the rescue teams decided that they will start to search very fast the buildings, and they try to locate voices and sounds, and we used canines, the dogs, search dogs, and of course different technologies that give us the indication if
Let's hold on. Let's just wait a second and see if he can reconnect. Colonel Edri, if you can go back to the canines.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so we use canines, the dogs, rescue dogs, and we use technologies that give us indications whether there are people inside this building. So our rescuers needed to run between buildings and try to locate live signs. And in a lot of cases, including two cases that I experienced myself, people that were in the street actually grab our hands and try to take us by the hand to this house or that house, and told us that their child, their husband, their brother are in that building, and they asked us to try to locate them. And we had this great dilemma whether to do it or to skip to the next building, because we knew that in some of the buildings there were people trapped that we could save, and in others we knew that although family members tried to convince us to start rescue actions, that there is no chance to save them. So in more than, a few dozens of cases, our rescue teams needed to decide on the spot whether to postpone a request to come to see a building or to do it. And the test was the outcome of whether we can locate someone, or if we have indication that someone is alive in that building or not. And this is a great value, a great dilemma that we needed to solve by ourselves. This is something that nobody taught you in any course, in any kind of professional seminar. It's something that you experience for the first time, and you need to decide like in live just during an action. And also, the population here, they refuse to leave the buildings. There is a phenomena here that hundreds of people are in the streets in front of the buildings that were collapsed. People that before the collapse lived in that building, and they refused to go to like this. There are stadiums here with tents, like refugee camps, and the population here, a very big part of it, they refuse to go to these camps. They stand in front of the building that once were.
I'm just going to give him a second. Past couple of times he's been able to reconnect pretty quickly. Okay. I'm getting a message that, here he is. Okay, great. Colonel Edri, we've got you. If you can hear us. Yes, you were talking.
I can.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you. In what part was it?
You were talking about how they refused to go to the stadiums.
They refuse to go to these refugees tents in the stadiums. So during the rescue actions, a lot of family members are standing in front of the building, watching the rescue teams working, and very anxious and very exciting and very nervous to see what will be the result. So try to imagine what happens to a rescue team, to the rescuer that see the family members out of the building, like 20 feet from the point he works, and they are waiting to see if he succeed to pull out their family members.
Wow. Unimaginable. Honestly, we can't even begin to fathom what that experience must be like. But it's incredible to hear how the people were recognizing the value that you were bringing. It makes us so proud of everything that you're doing, that you're able to, there's some bridge building within all of this somehow. Can you share with us, I understand that the climate also was impacting the search and rescue. Oh, actually, I'm going to pause on that. I see that Colonel Edri is fixing his video. All right, so Dr. King, if you're, yes, I see you're there. While we're waiting for Colonel Edri to come back, I would love to ask you about what Colonel Edri referenced a moment ago. Can you share with us what it's been like treating the Syrian refugees as well that are coming into the medical clinic?
So we had actually a few Syrian refugees in the ICU. That's where I was working. One of them was a very, very severe case of a 65-year-old gentleman who was caught under the rubble, and his legs were caught under stone and suffered severe injury to the legs. He came in a very, very bad situation and required pretty significant and intensive treatment. There were two things about the Syrian refugees. Most of the population did not speak English, so we had to communicate either with translators or with Google Translate or some kind of other device. It actually was the Syrian refugees, because they speak Arabic, and a lot of the staff does have some knowledge of Arabic. It was sometimes easier to connect and easier to talk to. And it was difficult because, these people have been refugees once. The gentleman I'm talking about has been a refugee for 7 years. And now he will need to be a refugee again and rebuild his life just once again. That can be very, very tough. I think that the relation with the local teams was not different to the Syrian refugees or to the local population. I think everybody got the same treatment, and I think everybody. This tragedy brought us together, and the difference if you're Israeli or Turk or Syrian was less important at this point.
I was wondering if you could also speak to what this experience has been like for the soldiers, being surrounded by so much death, so many, critical decisions needing to be made so many times a day. How are the soldiers doing?
The team on the intensive care unit is actually made up of mostly ICU professionals. We are supposed to be used to treating these kind of events, but we truly are not. We're not all treating children on a day-to-day basis, and we had quite a few children in the ICU. And imagining these children being pulled out of the rubble, maybe being saved, their lives being saved, but losing everything else, including their families, is very, very difficult. To hear the children, a little boy of 4 or 5 crying to his mother that he'll never see again in the middle of the night can be very, very difficult. We support each other. We also had a psychologist on the team who came and helped us and supported us. We did have a very special soldier called Yuval. She's a 19-year-old soldier who's an EMT. She actually teaches a new generation of EMTs, and she's so good that she was brought on the mission with us and put in the ICU. So for her, first time to see death, it's difficult. I think we support each other. I think we give each other strength. Use, of course, the psychologist. Share our experiences and our feelings. Because sometimes even hardened doctors like myself can have something very sad or emotional come at them, and you need to deal with it. You need to talk to somebody. I think that what helped was the successes, because to take a child that was brought to the hospital practically dying, and he was minutes from dying, and being able to save him and being able to bring him back to life, and seeing the next morning, so drinking his milk chocolate. I mean, you think of that, and that gives you strength.
Absolutely. It may be an impossible question, but is there a way to quantify, the amount of success that you guys have had in saving lives there thus far? Like, for instance, we know that we were able to pull 19 people from the rubble, which is extraordinary. And in terms of comparison in Surfside, they weren't able to save one person. Is there a way to sort of quantify for us so we can understand?
So I think it is a bit of an impossible question, because, not all the patients that were admitted to the intensive care unit were necessarily in a life-threatening position, but definitely they were very sick. I think that we did manage to make a huge impression there. I think that we, not only in the ICU, but also in the emergency department and in the regular ward, we managed to make a big impression, take people who were very sick and give them the help they needed and that they couldn't get anywhere else. The other thing is that this hospital was not working. Very soon after we came in, there were teams from Turkey itself, volunteers that came in from different regions of Turkey. And actually, I think one of the major successes of this mission in the hospital was taking a place that was not working and making it work again. And even after we leave, this place will continue working and providing medical assistance to this population who is in great need now.
That's a great segue. If you can both speak to, what is some of the medical equipment, some of the medical advances that Israel was able to bring to this situation that have really turned out to be critical in saving lives there?
I'll start. So we came with a lot of equipment. Of course, we can't bring always the cutting edge of equipment, because not all of it is mobile, but we did come with monitors, ventilators, portable ultrasound machines, some medications. But we also came with technique, and we also came with a capability to, maybe I'll use the word improvise. I'm not sure it's exactly correct word, but showing that things can be done even though the conditions are not optimal. Medicine is pretty, sometimes it's pretty regular around the world. I'm not sure that we could bring, the most sophisticated imaging, but we did bring proper imaging, and we also helped the local hospital get the equipment that they already had ready to use. For example, we had a dialysis machine in the intensive care unit, and on our team we have Dr. Mark Romain, who's a ICU doctor and a nephrologist at Hadassah, and he, together with a nephrology nurse, a dialysis nurse, managed to get the system back online. So if needed, we can actually do dialysis in the ICU, which is something that's pretty unique and pretty impressive for a place that was hit by a terrible earthquake a few days ago.
For sure.
I would like to add that Dr. King was too modest. Our medical teams, they brought values, and I want to explain. When we first got here, the first night, the temperatures here are sub-zero in Celsius. We operate here in a terrible cold, and add to this the fact that the medical teams, the Turkish medical teams in the hospitals, after two major earthquakes, and it's the time to explain to the audience that last Monday there were two major earthquakes, not only one. The first was in 3:15 a.m. and the second was on noon, 7.7 magnitude. So they experienced two major earthquakes. So they are scared, and they were terrified to operate from inside the hospital. So they abandoned the hospitals. They built tents out of the hospitals in the parking lots, and they started to operate from these tents, all the medical Turkish teams. So when we got from Israel, they told us, we don't want you to put your field hospital in tents. We want you to take a building that was abandoned of real hospitals with real departments and real rooms, and take the facilities and renew it. And what Dr. King and his friends did, they picked one hospital that is 6 floors, and they actually renewed the hospital. And only a day after they got inside, the Turkish original teams started to get back to the building. And from day to day, I think this is the 6th day, from day to day, more and more nurses and doctors from Turkey, they came, they started to work with our teams, and then they obviously wanted to get back to their own departments and to start to operate and to manage the department by themselves. And tomorrow morning here, local time 9 a.m., we give them back the full building to do it themselves with their teams, with their equipment. And of course, we give them some of the equipment we brought from Israel, most of it medicines that we put it here. We don't take it back to Israel, because the fact that Israeli teams came from Israel and got to an abandoned hospital and renew it and started to operate it and made the original Turkish staff to get back to it. And you see hundreds of people come every day to this hospital to get the treatment. It's not related to people that were injured in the collapse. It's people that they're sick. This is the purpose of an hospital. And the hope and the values that the delegation, the medical team brought to that building, to that hospital, I think this is the main idea, not the medical equipment or the medicines or anything else on this area.
Incredible. I mean, that they were able to make that happen amidst everything that was happening is extraordinary. Our soldiers are incredible. It's truly, I don't have words. They're just like the genre. Like they're so amazing. Really, I'm sure I speak for everyone on the call. I just feel so full of pride and thank God. They're so amazing.
Well, something that is related to that subject that you didn't ask, during this week, from the moment we were first standing here, I think even from the last hours in Israel, at least to me, the FIDF asked us if we need help, if we need something. And every day, officials from this organization were in touch with me. From time to time, they disturbed me, and I told them that I'm busy. We're doing other things. But every day they asked if we need something, if we need whatever we need, they'll bring it. They'll bring it here to Turkey. But we brought from Israel all the abilities that the IDF can bring, and the bond between the delegation and the organization, and the fact that they thought about our needs, it's something that is extraordinary for me. And in my original role as a brigade commander, they support 6 of my units. So this is something that I like to emphasize here, even it's not asked.
Thank you so much, Colonel Edri.
If I can add something, yeah. So I've never been to any of these events of the FIDF. It's my first time, and hopefully I'll manage to do it again. When you operate far away from home, and you're far away from your family and far away from your regular situations, usually in your environment. Sometimes the environment can be tough. People have been sleeping on floors, and the water, for example, here was down, so we sort of showered once or twice since we arrived. To know that there's support from other places in the world, from your own family, and from other places in the world, that people are backing you up and thinking of you. You were talking about how we feel as soldiers and how we deal with it as soldiers. This is a huge support, and this is very, very important to know that there are people out there, friends of the IDF, that are supporting us and are thinking of us and understanding that what we're doing is important.
Absolutely. I know I speak for everyone on this call when we say we're in awe. We're in absolute awe of the soldiers. We know that you, all of the soldiers that you're serving with, you left your families, your jobs, dropped everything on a dime to go, to put on your uniform, to save lives in another country, not knowing how long you're going to be gone, not knowing what conditions you're going to face, what the consequences are going to be emotionally, what the reception is going to be, with so many unknowns. And there's no questions. It's just automatic. Of course, that's what I'm going to do. It's incredible for us to be able to do anything to express our pride, our appreciation, our gratitude. That's what's obvious for us.
But you should also know that on every place, from every member of the delegation, and I said we came here 412 people. I think that something like 10 people tried to come and participate on each, and I mean thousands of people from all over the IDF tried to be part of this delegation. Thousands of people addressed us as the commanders of the delegation, and I believe that dozens of doctors from all the hospitals in Israel tried to come and be part of this delegation, although they knew that they're going to work in very tough terms. They're going to experience the worst environment that you can imagine, with this freezing cold and with this problems in the city. This is a city without water, almost until now, without electricity, and with a lot of other facility problems, and yet a lot of soldiers, a lot of officers try to be part of this delegation in order to bring what I think is the values of the Israeli people to Turkey.
Absolutely.
I think that the largest challenges are it motivates us more to be able to come and give, because we always see ourselves as the first responding country and a country that can give as much as it can and sometimes the most to these situations.
Kol hakavod from all of us. We're just in awe. I know that, and by the way, like it's not obvious, it's not a given that you are able to take time out of your days to speak with us today. I want to move forward and ask, what is ahead? You know, we saw that the search and rescue team left. What's coming up for the medical team? Like, how are you able to gauge the next steps?
Over the past few days, we've been working with the Turkish teams and slowly handing over more and more responsibility to the Turkish teams. As the colonel said before, tomorrow we are going to hand over the hospital back to the Turkish teams, and all being well, we'll be heading home. Leaving behind a lot of new friends and bonds and gaining a lot of emotional experiences and happy and sad moments together.
Colonel Edri?
Well, tomorrow we are going to leave Turkey. Tomorrow morning we will hand over the responsibility of the hospital, as Dr. King said. And during the early noon hours, we about to departure back to Israel and to reunite with our families. And before we close this answer, there is a very important story we didn't tell. The first day we got here, we got a phone call from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel, and we got a very special request about two Jewish people that are missing in a very small village, only 20 kilometers from the Syrian border. And we needed to get and to take a very, very tough decision that the senior officers in Israel were involved in order to approve to a team to get out of town and go to the Syrian border to find these two Jewish people that were missing, because their children addressed the Israeli government and said that their parents, which were once Israelis and now live in Turkey, they live in this small village, and now we need to find them. So it took a huge risk, and we sent only 30 people with only two small buses with a small amount of water and food, and they went to that village without any guidance, any profession help, any Turkish local forces, police or army or so, and they got to that village, and they worked in a row for I think 32 hours or so without sleeping, without resting, and they found these two people. They were old people, a couple of old people, a man and a woman, and they managed to recover their bodies. Unfortunately, they were dead, and they managed to pull out the bodies and to hand the bodies to the kids of these two people. And they had a short ashkava ceremony on the side, and they took them back to the center of Turkey. And this is a demonstration of what we see in the IDF, of our responsibility and our obligation to give a hand to any Jew in any point in the world that is in danger, in a sorrow or problem, in such a disaster. And at the first 2 or 3 days, we weren't allowed to talk about it. I even got two different text messages from people I know in the States that they knew about this story, and they knew that there are 2 people that are missing in the Syrian border, and they asked me if we will look for them, if we will help them, and I could not answer them. So I told them that we are familiar with this case, and I can't talk about it. But now we can say that we managed to bring the bodies back to the family, and although it's very sad, in general, this is a happy end to this story.
It's amazing because you say we only sent 30 people. And I'm thinking you sent 30 people were sent. That is, what people does that? What country does that? And the people who went with so much uncertainty, and we know it's an area you don't know what's going to happen. So it's astounding. And you're right. It is that you get to go to the children and say, we found them. The outcome was and what they hoped is a second point, but they know that you were there for them, that the soldiers were there for them and did everything in their power. It's amazing story. Well, thank you both so much for being with us. I want to tell you on behalf of everyone on this call that we love you. We love you so much, and we appreciate you, and we hope Hashem blesses you and protects every last hair on your head, and that of all of the soldiers. And we are so grateful that you took the time to be with us. For everyone who's watching at home, again, if you want to do something, you can. We are responding to the IDF's request to fund emergency medical equipment. So you can go to FIDF.org and you can contribute if you're so compelled. And Colonel Edri, Major Dr. King, thank you so much for being with us. Kol hakavod for everything that you do.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening. Bye-bye.